Hello, how are you, doctor?
Okay, take the pictures. Gone. I think it's light now. Is it light now? Yeah, it's light. Yes, light. Yes, it's light. Okay. All right. So how are you today?
I'm good. Actually, I've been not feeling too well these past few days, but feeling better now.
All right. All right. Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
So okay. So we're here today to talk about certain things and experiences about people living with HIV. Right. And I think it would be great if you could share some of your experiences. So to start off with, I mean, we can make this a very casual conversation between the both of us, and you can
Yeah.
feel free to ask me anything. No limits. So I'd just like to ask you. I mean, how is it like, Mr. Tariq, when you're first diagnosed with HIV?
Mm. How did it feel like? Well, that was almost 7 years ago, or it was
Okay.
7 years ago. The starting of it was a bit scary, I guess, because you hear all these things, and I mean, as a kid, I remember when I was 5 or 6, there used to be this advertisement on RTM. I think it's in the late 80s, and they used to talk about HIV a lot that time, right? So that's all I pretty much knew about it. But the graphics in it were pretty like, ooh, scary, right? And growing up, like I've read about it, I've seen it in TVs, but it's one of those things that you think won't happen to you.
Okay.
So you don't take it very lightly. But when it did happen to me, yeah, I wasn't so much. I wasn't scared about the disease because I had met someone who had the disease, and at the time I was dating someone who had the disease,
Okay.
and so the disease never scared me. I was more worried about the stigma about other people because I know not everyone is as open or as understanding or as educated, basically. Um, because at the end of the day, to me, no matter what disease you have or whatever illness you have, you're still a human being worthy of being treated like a normal, decent human being. But I guess in Malaysia, because you know how the mentality is like,
Yeah.
you know you know
Yeah.
how the mentality is like. It's like we make fun of people with mental illness. I'm not we, but I mean, say in a general majority in Malaysia, they make fun of
Yeah.
people with mental illness. They make fun of people from lower income brackets. It's we're just that sort of community. So I think that was one of my biggest worries when I
Yeah.
first found out about how am I going to keep my job, how am I going to tell my family, all these things. And also when because I went to a clinic in Bangsa to get treated and to get my results, and then they referred me to Sungai Buloh. And I'll be really honest, the environment in Sungai Buloh really did not help with with the fear,
Yeah.
because you walk in and straight away it's like infectious disease, and then you go in and everyone's really sick. And something I think the Malaysian Health Department has not changed is the advert for HIV. They still show people like, half dead under a tree with scared. It's so fear based,
Yeah.
and fear fear is actually the real disease for me. It's like, why are you doing this? Like, how are you supposed to comfort people when you instill so much fear?
Yeah.
But I was very lucky that I had a good support system. I mean, I came out to friends and family really, really quick. And at first, not by choice though, but I'm kind of happy it went that way. So then it was sort of just out of out in the air, like, okay, done. Like, that's one step done. And then the second step was figuring out, okay, now what next?
Okay. All right. So, do you think? I mean, have you ever had this? I mean, a lot of my patients, per se, I've dealt with a lot of people who have HIV as well, and I've treated them. And one of their main key concerns is also dealing with the paranoia of passing it down. To say that, okay, am I going to pass it down? Am I going to transmit it? What's my condition? So a lot of people actually deal with that paranoia, especially when they're first diagnosed, you see. So did you have that when you had it? I mean, more than the disease itself, was there like a constant paranoia in your mind that you're going to pass it down or, yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely. Like even when I was undetectable after being on the medication, like I got undetectable really quick. I think within the first month of going on the medication, I was undetectable. But yeah, that paranoia was always there. I mean, even up till now, it's like because this is the thing. Like I do feel, and because I've never gone to your clinic, so I don't know how you deal with things. But from the experiences that I've had, um, the mental aspect of HIV treatment should be like 10 times better in Malaysia. I feel like that's a
Yes.
certain place that's completely lacking. They say they have counseling in Sungai Buloh, but it's very like tak apalah kita doa yang you boleh sihat. It's very things like that. I mean, yeah, okay, that's good, but like, come on now, what we need
Yeah,
more than that.
I get it.
So yeah, so for me, like but here's the thing, it's like going swimming, sharing utensils, all this that wasn't a paranoia for me. For me, the paranoia was more like, okay, can I go for bekam? Can I go for urut?
All
If
right.
if acupuncture allowed, I still don't know if acupuncture is advisable for people with HIV.
Yeah.
It's like because or is getting tattoos. It's like or going to the dentist because the there's so many studies. Like some say, oh, once the virus is out of the body, please correct me if I'm wrong. Once the virus is out of the body after a certain amount of time, it dies, right? And also, if you really sterilize the equipment, then it's good. But then there's some people who say it's not. So I can see how all this does play into paranoia. But that's on a mental level. On an emotional level, I think because of the stigma and the fear that has been so pushed onto this disease, there is that emotional response of paranoia as well.
I think it's more like
Once you
mechanism.
Yeah, it's like once you push out that mental thing, you realize actually you want to hug someone also can be scary.
Yeah.
And that from all the fear that has been instilled on the person. It's so what's the word? It's so subconscious, so that fear. A lot of people don't realize it.
Yeah.
So yeah,
True.
like I still battle with it from time to time. So I think for me though, I realized that paranoia was starting to cripple me, and I could not live my life like that anymore. So I just had to in a way, I had to tell myself, like, you know what, as long as I'm responsible, in the sense where if there's blood, I make sure no one's around. If you get what I mean, I don't let anyone touch it. But other things like, yeah, it's a very gray, tricky area, I guess.
Yeah, I know. It's still a gray area in many areas because I feel, apart from just treating the patient with medication, there's a lot of things that come to play. I think it's providing them with good mental support, social support, and it's a treatment that is actually done holistically. And that's what I tell all my patients because I deal with patients who come in and when they realize they're positive, I mean, their first reaction to it is, "Am I going to die?" And that paranoia sort of lives on with them. Like, okay, I'm going to die soon, right? It's like a terminal thing that they actually deal with, and a lot of people
Yeah,
don't realize that it's actually a very controllable disease. And
yeah,
with the right support, I mean, of course, when you're dealing with diseases like cancer and other terminally ill diseases which progressively kills a person without you even knowing, it's different. But when it comes to HIV, a lot of people actually, the stigma, I think it's so huge that people actually have sort of like magnified the effects more than it actually should. And a lot
yeah.
of people don't get that, you see. So in terms of how has all this actually affected, by being a person living with HIV, has it changed your view of the future? I mean, for example, if before you had HIV, you might have had plans about doing things and all that. you still have those goals and dreams after getting it? Did it stop you, or were there any hurdles saying that, okay, now that I have this, I don't think I can do this anymore? Or do you still view the future as something that, you know what, regardless of whether I have it or not, my dreams are my dreams. I'm definitely going to achieve it. So yeah.
Yeah. But I just want to touch on about like that too much fear. I think because we're still stuck in that mentality during the 80s when HIV first started, when so many people were dying. So that's still sort of fresh in people's mind because it's not that long ago. And when it came to the whole, just to speak to those who do get tested for HIV, if it does come up positive, don't be worried about the dying part because I know this is a bit weird to say, but we all die anyways. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah.
So my advice to that is like, just take care of yourself. That so it's like you can remove that fear of dying part. It's like we all will die anyways. So the best you can do in that time, not saying that oh you should wait to die, but like just be happy, be healthy, like take care of yourself. Um, and now coming to your question about has things changed for me? I will be very honest and say like HIV liberated me. In some weird way, I am very, very grateful that I was diagnosed with HIV because it empowered me on a level that I would have never imagined. I think because I was diagnosed when I was 28 years old, and I think up till that point, I was living a life where I was almost like a robot. There was no awareness
Okay.
in anything that I did. I was just like, okay, yeah, go to school, okay, go to school, go to college, okay, get a job, okay, pay this, pay bills, just have fun, drink. It was just I'm not condemning that, but I'm just saying for me personally, I realized like, wow, I kind of just went through 28 years of life, kind of just not really living. So after the diagnosis, then it was when I mean the first 2 years of the diagnosis was hard because I had to deal with a lot of stigma and everything. But when I took the holistic route, the alternative route of getting into chakra systems, of meditation and all these things, then my life began to have purpose. Then things shifted. I mean,
Okay.
I learned how to be a massage therapist. I learned about essential oil. I learned about all these other things that I would have never considered learning. I mean, even now, like I've been living in the Philippines since July last year, working on my emotional health and my mental health, like trying to figure out how to provide better advice. Because since going public 5 years ago, a lot of people have been approaching me for counseling, and I can only share what I've been through. So, and through some of my work, I've noticed how people even though they're on the medication, the viral load's undetectable, but the CD4 remains very low. So I wanted to, and also when I was working in positive living community, what I saw there was people on medication, but again, not really living, and the CD4s were always low. So the virus was undetectable, but the CD4, to me, I put more emphasis on the immune system because that's important. That's what keeps the body healthy. So yeah,
Yeah.
coming here,
Yeah.
I really delved deep into why, how do you fix the mind, the wiring of the mind, so that you can bring the CD4 up? Because I believe in that. Because when I was working in a hotel, when I first joined the hotel, and this was when I was already HIV positive, my CD4 count was at 980, and my viral load was
Okay.
undetectable. And for 7 months of working there, they ill treated me so badly. I mean, they wouldn't give me proper employment. They wouldn't give me a name tag. They wouldn't allow me to eat in the cafeteria. Things like this. Like but I put in so much work there. And by the seventh month when I got fired, when I checked my CD4, it had dropped to 400, and this is when I realized like, okay, so the medicine help, again, I could be wrong, this is just my own experience. The medicine can help with the viral load, but your immune system at the end of the day, it's dependent on you. So I really took this time to figure out like what is it in my mental wiring is helping, uh, which is causing my CD4 to go up and down. And I've written a book about it, explaining it like how, like basically just pulling back the layers of understanding how did HIV happen in my life. Because it's so easy to say, oh yeah, it's your sexual
Okay.
lifestyle or you use drugs, but again, it's like, how did I get to that stage? No one is born. There's
Level.
no
Yeah.
baby that's born and you say like, this baby's gonna have HIV. No, it's like that. It doesn't. It's like why. What in my childhood what in my childhood experiences led me to this point. Because like I said, I'm doing all this because the more people that come to me, I see the pain, I see the suffering, and I'm trying to just figure out different ways of helping. Because, like I said, with what I've gone through in the medical system, it's very like, here's the pill, just be happy. I deeper than that. Like you said, it's the mental aspect of things. So
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. I feel okay. So, Mr. Tariq, there's actually some questions here from some of the audience that are seeing. It said, why do you think HIV stigma is so big, and it seems like it doesn't go away no matter what we do? We can be going at parades up and down the road, and we can tell them all the awareness needed, but they seem to always have the stigma. Is it because it's more of a sexual thing? Do you think sex itself is a cause for all this stigma?
If we're talking, okay, because like I can only talk about Malaysia, okay? I think Malaysia, the problem with Malaysia is we are a nation built on shaming and guilt. We love it, subconsciously
Okay.
we've learned to love it. So that's the problem with stigma. It's like, if you're right, it's the sexuality, it's the sex, it's a lot of things. It's just that because if you look at Malaysia as a whole, right? We are built on this ideology like we are better than one another. It's like we are made to feel ashamed of who we are. So when you see someone else failing, it's almost like, yay, let's point that out because now the attention is taken away from me. We live in a country, it's like we're divided by race, we're divided by religion, and within the race we're divided as well. So this is what I was saying, like, and I never realized all this until this year when I was doing, really deep work. When I'm like, I get it now. This is why stigma will never end, because until we can
Okay.
eliminate shame and guilt from society, this programming of needing to shame and guilt another person, the
Yeah.
stigma will always be there, because I feel like
There.
it's a defense mechanism. Like for example, I could be shamed for being homosexual, right? So then if I see someone who's say a child rapist, I would be like, oh yeah, look at him. Don't look at me. Look at him. Do you get what I mean? Because it's just we
Yeah.
we like to constantly push the shame and the guilt. So I think that's the problem with the stigma problem in Malaysia. We need to get to the root cause of why this is happening. It's
Okay.
not just stigma about HIV, it's stigma about race, it's stigma about religion, and it's world, you see it worldwide. So yeah, for me personally, that's one thing. But on a lighter note, I think, like I said, what the Malaysian Health Department can do is probably change the adverts a bit, because like I said, the pictures that they use is so fear based. That's one thing. And also just the notion of saying like, oh, if you are gay, you are more likely to get HIV. I think even that should be what's the word, removed, because again, you're instilling unnecessary fear into a person's psyche. The
Yeah.
wordings that we use, the images that we use, all this really needs to be taken account, because I'm pretty sure that the human mind is very what's the word? It's very impressionable. So if we are constantly open to fear and
Yeah.
shame and guilt, this is what we mirror. This is what we understand. So to me, this is why stigma is a huge problem.
Thank you. And there's another question here. One of this is also in relation to a lot of outreach workers who are also helping a lot of people who have been diagnosed with HIV. But sometimes the main challenge is we a lot of them do not really know how they can actually support them or what is the right thing to actually say to them at that point of time. Yes, of course, referring them to proper centers like hospitals and all that is part of the protocol, but the emotional part, being an outreach worker, when you deal with someone who has HIV, the question is, what do people really want or like to hear from us? Or what do we not say or not do, when it comes to helping someone with HIV? Of course, first and
Okay.
foremost, I think the first thing is to say that, you asked for it. I think that's the very wrong thing to make them feel like this is something you deserve, because you asked for it. And I think a lot of people, even in my previous experience, who I have learned from, have different mindsets about how they look at people with HIV. So I think, what is your opinion about that, Tariq?
The emotional support, it's like so what I've come to understand, right? It's like because this again it goes back to the stigma thing.
Yes.
So let me, and we're trying to fight stigma and all that, but like I said, stigma, I feel it won't go away until we address other things. So for someone who does have who finds out that they do have HIV or are having troubles with all this about the stigma, uh, forget the stigma. I want to say the other word, but this is censored. I'll say, forget the stigma. Think of yourself as like a tree, okay? Think of yourself a tree. In order for a tree to grow healthy, you need the right environment, you need the right care, you need the right conditions. Then you grow healthy. Then you're happy. But if you planted a tree in an environment that was bad, where it's dry, there's no sun, there's not enough water, what happens to the tree? It withers, it dies. Essentially we're like trees. The difference between us and a tree is we can get up and walk away.
Yeah.
So what I'm trying to say is, if you find yourself in a place where people are judging you, so let's say example, like you find out you're HIV and you tell your workplace, and your workplace is like, we don't want you. My answer to that is, good, leave. Why would you want to be in an environment with people with that sort of mentality? You know, I do
Yeah.
understand that then the mind will kick into fear and say that, oh, but I need a job, I need a money. Yes, you can find that at other places who are more open, who are more accepting, who are more broad-minded, who are not going to judge you. Because again, why would you want to stay in an environment that made you sick in the first place? You know, so in the sense of emotional support, we really need to first ask, like, okay, I just want to know, like, with your work, right? When you find out someone is HIV, because they didn't do this for me in Sungai Buloh. Like, they didn't check what my background was, like what my childhood was, what my relationship with my family was, what my diet was like, the holistic part of things. I don't know if you do that, and because I see importance in that, because again, it's like if you contracted, example for me, again, this is all based on my own self
Yes.
work and realization, and also with the countless numbers of people with HIV that I've met in the last 7 years. Most of us who have gotten sex from HIV is because either we came from emotionally unavailable parents where we were constantly craving affection, so we went to all the wrong places looking for it. If it was people who got it from drug transmission, it's sometimes they have also self love issues, or turbulent childhood. It would really be interesting to see if there was a study that actually looked at all this, you know. So yeah, I think the emotional support is to really just ask the person first. It's like the first thing you should ask, what is the number one feeling that you constantly have in your life?
Yeah.
With me, I realized it was loneliness, because as much as I had friends around me, I had my friends and family, all this, very I hate to say that, a bit popular at work, all these things. I still felt lonely. So I had to go back and like, okay, where did this start from? You know? So a good thing is to first ask yourself. It's like I think what one thing that I did in my book is like I didn't ask who am I asked who is HIV because I've now become HIV, like it's a
Yeah.
label. So I asked
Yeah.
who is HIV, and then I listed down. I managed to list down 10 personality traits: lonely, angry, stubborn. I wrote it all down, and I'm like, okay, where did all these come from? I had to find because I like I said, I had my friends' support. I had people who were teaching me meditation. It still wasn't enough because I had to figure it out for myself. What about my emotional well-being is still not looked at? So you need to be really honest with yourself. Are you angry with your mother? Are you disappointed with your father? All these are valid reasons that need to be looked at. So for those who the emotional support, it's like the person dealing with the disease has to be honest with themselves first. Because here's the other thing, a lot of us when we get diagnosed, when we sakit, we dah macam tak apalah, forgive lah, it's like inilah, we go into that. It's like, no, okay, once you get through that, now ask yourself, what suppressed emotions are you still holding on to?
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Talking about honesty, I think it's really important. I think I totally agree with the fact when you said that we have to first be honest with ourselves and then with others. And another thing, Mr. Tarek, one of the common things that the issues which I usually face personally as a doctor sometimes is when people are diagnosed, and for example, if they want to go into a relationship with someone else, okay, or making new friends. Okay, let's not talk about relationship. Let's making new friends. Is there a need to disclose this or to tell their friends, for example, or do they have to realize that okay, I'm really close to this person, and then I'm going to disclose that I have HIV? Or do you think that the moment I get it, if I'm really close to this bunch of friends, we're hanging out, we're going out, we're drinking, having fun, is there a need for me to actually tell them that I'm HIV positive? Or do we actually wait, till the relationship gets stronger and we know that okay, this is the person I'm going to live and die with, and then yeah, then I'm going to tell you. How do we deal with those kind of issues?
Okay. See, this is the weird part, okay? Like, these are the same people who are afraid of dying, right? But then
Yeah.
at the same time, they're okay with wasting time. Wasting time by building this relationship with someone, and then you don't know how they're going to feel, and then say after 2 years of building a bond, you tell them you're HIV, and the person's like, peace out. So which is it? Are you afraid of dying, or are you afraid of wasting time? So I think what I want to go back to saying is, again, just tell. I think for me, one of the reasons why I came out publicly was because I was tired of that. Tired of this being put in situations where, you know, every job that I applied for after that, I just wrote it on my resume, on my interview paper thing, and I just I said, listen, I'm HIV positive, because I just didn't want to go through all this, especially being stigmatized at the hotel. It was like I don't want to go through that anymore. And and also just because I was HIV, it didn't mean that I didn't have a social or a romantic life. I still wanted to date. I would
Yeah.
have good conversations with guys, and then when I opened up about my status, they were like, oh, I'm so sorry for you, that sort of thing. It's like, oh, maybe we just be friends. And I'm like, oh, God, you know. So I think that was one of the main reasons why I came up publicly, because I was like, you know what? Hello, world. It was like I said, coming up publicly wasn't to get sympathy. It wasn't to be whatever. It was just
You are
like,
making a very
this
clear
is me right
statement
now.
to everyone. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's a statement.
yeah. Like, because
Yeah.
again, it's like, why would thinking about it more, especially in these last few years, is like, why would I want to keep people who are so narrow-minded and not conducive for my well-being in my life? This is the thing everyone needs to understand. This life is all about you and your happiness.
Yeah.
You choose your environment. You choose the conducive environment to yourself. Why would you want negative things in your life? This is why I tell a lot of of the people that come to me for advice when they get HIV, I'm like, even if it's not HIV, because I do like a holistic therapy and all this, and I tell them, I said, it's like, why do you want to keep negative people in your life?
Yeah.
Be glad. Like if you get a diagnosis, like for me, like I said, HIV, any disease that happens to you, to me, my understanding is it's your body and your soul telling you there's something going wrong inside. You are not attracting the right conducive environment for your own well-being. It's dis-ease. Your body is dis-ease. It does not like the environment.
Yeah. But yeah, I do agree. I mean, yes, I think people need to first realize that they need to stop looking. You see, when they feel scared telling someone, whether it's their friends or what, they themselves are stigmatizing the disease. They're not taking it
Exactly.
as something normal. And I think it's very important to just take it one step at a time, and not look at it like a stigma yourself first before actually saying that all people are looking at it like a stigma. But okay, and another question, Mr. Tariq, they is from someone says, is it proven now that even if you have HIV, it's pretty rare nowadays to get AIDS? Well, okay, this is directed to me actually. So I think, in my opinion, yes, it's still rare to get AIDS, because I think more and more people are beginning to be more compliant, and I think the awareness level is actually much better than 10 or 20 years ago. Uh, we have come to a point to at least understand that HIV can't really spread by touch, or by hugging someone. Because at one point of time, there were times where people who had HIV, and they used to think that that is like the end line, and there is nothing you can do about it. And people never even believed that there were medications to help reduce the viral load counts and all that. And I think over time, people have come to realize that medication works. It helps to not cure the disease, but keep it at a more controlled state, you know. And there are more practitioners and doctors out there who are willing to form support groups and all that. So I think compared to those days, the deterioration from HIV to AIDS has actually lessened compared to now, compared to those days. I mean, it's lessened now, sorry. So yes, and I think it's very important for us to understand that it's not just treating the symptoms that come along with HIV. It's treating it holistically. And when I mean holistically, it's like what Mr. Tariq said. I totally agree. It's treating the mental, emotional part. Having them, make them not feel that they're discriminated, like they are living in a sin. For the rest of their life. And I think it is important to understand HIV just like any other disease. Yes, the mode of transmission might be sexually or through a needle prick or blood or whatever. But the thing is, we should understand that it's still a disease that should not be stigmatized, because I think people individually go through that disease, and it's something they have to live with for the rest of their life. So, I think more and more people out there should actually realize how important it is to just support them mentally and emotionally and all that. And yes, and another person has asked, do you think HIV will? I mean, there will actually be a cure in future for HIV. I mean, regardless of whether it's just medicine or maybe with time, who knows, some therapeutic way or something. Do you think that there is actually a cure for people living with HIV, Mr. Tariq? What do you think about that?
This can be very controversial because I'm like I said, I'm on a completely different journey. Okay, so the thing is, if you do, like I said, I've done a lot of research online and all this. Even like the two scientists who did find HIV. Like one doctor was in America, one doctor was in Germany. And they both had different opinions on it as well. The guy in America, the doctor in America said HIV leads to AIDS. The one in Germany said no, it doesn't. The one in Germany said if your immune system is boosted up, you can cure yourself. So, but again, there's just so much stories out there, so it's like you don't know which to choose, but you normally go for the one that sounds the most safe. Also, I don't know if there's this Dr. Sebi who famously came out and said that he cured people with HIV, he cured people with cancer, all through an
Yeah,
alkalized diet. you
correct.
know. So all that is out there again, and the thing is, I want to catch up, like follow up on something that you said, like the symptoms of HIV. For me, HIV is a symptom of something deeper. You get what I'm saying? It's like, to me, it's like HIV is a symptom. Where That's why I said it's really important to do that self work and figure out where did how did you attract this into your life? Because again, no one is born and you're saying like, this person's gonna have HIV. It doesn't make sense. So do I think HIV will leave, will disappear, or there'll be a cure? I do believe so, but a part of me, and I'm not being pessimistic, I'm not being negative, but I do feel when that disease is cured, there'll be something new. I mean, look at the pandemic that's happening right now. It's like there will always be a disease, and for whatever reason it keeps happening. Like some people are saying it's a conspiracy theory, some people are saying it's human control. I don't want to get into all that, but what I'm saying is we need to stop fearing the disease.
Okay.
We need to stop fearing the disease. We just need to figure out ways of how to keep ourselves healthy, how to take care of our well-being, because yeah, it's I mean, look at TB. TB has been killing how many, taking away how many lives for how many years. It's and so I guess what I'm saying is like there will always be some form of virus coming up. There will always be something. I think the best thing to look at is like how do we stop giving in to the fear?
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I think. Okay. So, last question. I wanted to ask you, do you think, I mean, in terms of different cultures or people from different backgrounds or different countries, like, for example, people who are, do people from like Asians treat you differently? Like now I know that you're in the Philippines and I think it's a really beautiful country, and
Yeah.
do people there treat you differently compared to your experience here? I mean, how different was your experience from the time when you were in Malaysia and now that you're there? I mean, is there a difference in the terms of how they treat you or how they react towards, the fact that you're having HIV? Is it totally the same, or is it totally there is a difference there that you feel?
I think like I said, for me, once I made that conscious decision to do a lot of self work to start eliminating people who were not good for my well being, in a way, I just started attracting people who were accepting. You see, I really believe that we are sort of like antennas. You know, we emit this signal and we attract. So if in your mind you have this belief that you are unworthy or there's something wrong with you, that HIV is something to fear, it's almost like the universe will keep pushing this sort of experience to you because this is what you believe in. So for
Okay.
me, once I empowered myself, once I came to accept the HIV, I embraced it. I didn't fear it. I just attracted people who were like, "Hey, you're just a normal human being to us," you know. So this is what I'm saying. It's like I I I I'm not saying that we should stop the awareness. No, we should we should keep doing that. The fighting the stigma part, we need to stop fighting the stigma, like change all the, I mean, for people with the disease, like change the focus to yourself. Do the inner work. Figure out what is it inside of you that is creating these experiences over and over again. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Mr. Tariq. I think it has been a really wonderful time talking to you today. And
Thank
yeah,
you.
thank you so much. All right.
Thank you. I'll send you a link of my book. You can give it a read.
Definitely. Definitely. Thank you.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.